two, one. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Adwicta.
This is Merps. Hope you guys are doing well. It's a month into the new year. A month has passed by pretty quickly. Time passes by pretty quickly in general, man.
Yeah. You blink and then it's gone. Or you play Hearthstone and you realize that this is now like what, second and a half week into this this adventure meta, and you're gonna have another week and a half in here before we're done with this and we're off to the next wild rotations. So while we're still here, I want this one last podcast because we also don't know exactly what the next wild rotation is. I'm pretty sure it's going to be just standard. We've said it a lot of times, it just makes too much sense, but it's literally nothing coming from Blizzard to confirm or deny that. So we're going to talk about this current meta. Well, this podcast is going to be three parts. One, this current meta in the arena. Two, Shady Bunny is no longer an arena player.
It's crazy.
Hearthstone player at all.
End of an era.
End of an era. We'll talk about that. I know, I mean, we've had Shady on here. He's probably been on here actually more often than anybody else. Like,
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, because Colin stopped for like a long time before he came back. And Ratsma's been not a streamer essentially for a while now. So I think Shady Bunny probably holds the record for most times on the Lightforge.
I believe so. Yeah.
And three, we're going to talk a little about Battlegrounds and the new demon meta that we haven't yet addressed on our podcast. So yeah, let's kick this off. Deepfried Meta for the arena. I'm going to start this off just because there's a lot of players who hate this meta, and you know, I'm not going to say I like this meta, but I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's below average of a meta. And I do think it got better with Galakrond's Awakening. I've gotten 11 or 12 wins with like almost all the classes. My record overall is pretty good. I mean, it still swings low, but it's not as bad. Like, people are really afraid of Twin Tyrant, right? And that's, I mean, it's fair. It's kind of a crazy card to come out on 8. But if what you care about is keeping it high average or winning, this is not like the end of the road, right? Like, you're not going to have as high of an average as you did before Descent of Dragons came out, but you're also not like, you shouldn't be looking at it and be like, oh, I averaged 6 wins now, I used to average 7.5. That's not what's happening in this meta. So just accept that everyone's getting a lower win rate, and you should still be fine, right? Like, even if you only win 6.5 wins per run, that's a lot of wins. You're still winning more than twice what you lose, right? Like, from a feelings perspective, it shouldn't even matter that much. And from a competitive perspective, just know that everyone else has lower averages too. The top players, at least. So it's, yeah. And the way... you have to think about the meta differently. You have to do some things differently for this meta, because we've talked about all the parts of what this meta is actually doing, right? About which turns are important, about what strategies are out there, about what cards are good, about like why the swing is so crazy. Now we're gonna put it together, and I'm gonna call it the oh shit plan. We don't curse a lot, but this is the meta where you gotta curse because it's that freaking crazy. The oh shit plan is something you need in this meta. And it's not just a thought in your head. It's not just a plan. It's something that you have to build from the draft. And what that means is there's going to be many decks. Many decks. Hopefully not most of your decks, but we're talking a good quarter of your decks at the very least that are just not going to have a oh shit plan. Because Blizzard will not let you create that deck. Does that mean those decks are going to suck? No, but it means they're not going to be good. You can still salvage runs, right? Like, something that I always like to do, and a lot of people used to love doing this as well, but in this meta, you don't hear so much from these people. And that's, you end up drafting a crap deck, which I know we've all forgotten what drafting a total crap deck looks like since the buckets came in. But now the buckets are gone, you're just going to have some crap decks sometimes. You're going to have some non-functional decks sometimes. You're going to have some just, like, low-value, like, decks sometimes. And people love taking those decks, being like, oh, man, that is one of the worst decks ever, and I got 5 wins. I love doing that personally. Like when I see a bad deck, I'm not let people. There's always a request to retire decks, and if you watch me and Merz play, like we never retire decks. We'll play anything, and that's because I get as much pleasure taking a crap deck to 5 wins as I do taking a good deck to 12 wins. It's not any different, right? You do what you do, and it's all skill based. In some sense, and it's the arena, right? You're playing the arena for one of two possible things, right? If you don't enjoy these two things, I don't know why you're in the arena, because these things happen a lot. One is you like to beat players who are worse than you, not players who are the same skill as you, and not players who are better than you. If you are competitive in the arena, you must on some level enjoy beating people who are not as good as you, because that's who you're facing most of the time. If you want to face people around your level and skill, you need like some kind of matchmaking system or a ladder like constructed, like Battlegrounds.
Constructed, right. Yeah.
Like, they're there for you, but you pick the arena, presumably because you derive some kind of pleasure from actually winning 2 or 3 times more games than you lose. I know I do. Like, I like facing people my level, or for like a challenge, but on a day-to-day basis, I like to beat up on people a little bit worse than me. And the arena lets me do that, and I like the arena for that. And on some level, you do as well. Maybe you don't admit it, maybe you embrace it like I do, but that hasn't changed. The other thing you must enjoy in the arena is you must enjoy beating people who have more resources than you, people who have better decks than you have. If you wanted to face people on an even playing ground deck-wise, you'd play constructed and pay some money and get like the good cards, right? Or right, like there's modes for that. But arena is uneven. It's even when you start out before the draft starts, but by the end of the draft, before you play your very first game, you're already on an uneven playing ground. Some people have much better decks, some people have much worse decks. It's not like who had the most skill in building the decks, right? That's a part of it, but for the most part, it's whether Blizzard gave you good cards or okay cards or bad cards. That's always been true. Now, assuming those are two things that you like doing, you like beating people with better decks than you, and you like beating people who are worse than you, the more, we'll say bad, the less skilled the meta is, the more players who are worse than you are going to face. And the more decks that are better than yours, you are going to face. Not necessarily that the deck overall is better, but the shenanigans that happen within a game make the deck seem like it's better, right? So you're actually getting more reps of the things that you already enjoy about the arena. That's my philosophy when looking at a bad meta and saying, like, not all is lost, right? Like, this meta is still worth playing in, even if it is, I think, quite obviously less skilled than most metas we've seen in the past.
So, on the flip side, you also get beat a lot more by players worse than you.
Mm-hmm. But I'm not talking about winning or losing. I'm talking about facing.
Right.
Facing. The actual challenge itself, right?
Well, you're facing them, but you were saying if you're talking about enjoyment, you do sort of in some way enjoy beating them, right?
Yeah.
But if you enjoy that, you probably don't enjoy getting beat by them.
That's true. So maybe for a lot of people, getting beat by a bad player is so bad that like winning over a bad player needs a certain percentage to make the arena enjoyable, and that's what they're going for, and the odds have shifted so much. But I kind of just like to face bad players and be like, ha, he made a misplay. Ha, I did this better, even if I lose in the end. Like, I think if you watch me play, you see that I get less upset than I think most people do by being beat by clearly worse players. Like, I have a line. If you're like super misplaying like every other turn, I get really annoyed, because that's like way below. But if it's someone that's like, okay, I see that they made a misplay or two and it didn't matter, I don't let it tilt. Probably because I make a misplay or two quite frequently in a game, and it rarely causes me the loss. So why should it cause my opponent the loss, right? Misplays don't matter. Okay. So, like, mentally, that's your mental game, right? Like, adjust your expectations down a bit when it comes to your pure win rate and treat it like an experience. You're getting more experience at doing things that are important to the arena, which is facing decks that are better than you and facing players that are worse than you. Your results are not going to have that same win percentage that it used to, but the experience of the challenge is similar, I think. Just don't let it tilt you. Okay, So anyway, back to the OSHA plan. The OSHA plan is what you do when the moment happens in the game. And the moment can happen multiple times in the game, but it's going to happen at least once every other game in this meta. Because people have Twin Tyrants. And sometimes your opponent has a Twin Tyrant and you don't have a Twin Tyrant. And that in itself triggers the OSHA plan. So OSHA plans were always in the game. And it just means a big thing has happened. You were winning. Oh shit, are you still going to win? And the answer should be, I at least know what the plan is, and we'll see if I win or not, right? But a good player recognizes the oh shit moment, and now the oh shit moments are so obvious that you don't even have to be a good player to recognize it. It's just kind of like, here's the moment, do you have a plan? So when Blizzard says, here's the moment, and your opponent plays that Twin Tyrant and kills off your stuff on the board, you need a plan. And you need to already have that plan. And that plan has to be built in the draft. And then execute it, right? But there's plenty of decks, like I said before, that you just don't have an OSHA plan. And when you lose, you just lose. Okay, so here are the things that can happen that'll trigger the OSHA plan. The first one is the one that's been happening more and more frequently and used to literally never happen, and it's opponent gets 4 more cards than you. You used to have to play a sprint, right? And skip your turn basically to do that. Now it just kind of happens. You know, you play like a Dragon Roar and then another dragon that draws a dragon and then like something else. And you've like spent like maybe like 2 or 3 mana and you've gotten like 5 more cards. Your opponent could do that to you.
We've all been there.
We've all been there.
They just play big ol' whelps. Yeah. They don't even need super premium stuff. No. Just a big ol' whelp or 2 is fine.
Yeah, an Explorer, a big ol' whelp, and then like 1 more card draw card. Boom, they have way more cards than you now. So you need a plan for when that happens. Now, what if they do that and you're playing aggressively? Well, you don't care because you're playing aggressively. It's great that they're drawing cards. If they spend 3 mana to draw 20 cards, that's them spending 3 mana less. That's good for you, right? You don't care that they drew 20 cards for 3 mana. That was terrible of them to try to do that. If you're playing mid-range, you got to switch. To the extent that you had card advantage before and you were playing towards that somewhat, you need to recognize that you no longer have card advantage and you need to push. So a lot of people are hesitant on this transition between like playing a normal game and like, I need to do something. Not like, okay, I need to prioritize going face, but like, okay, now the Frostbolt that I have in my hand, screw Frost, now the Holy Smite I have in my hand is actually supposed to go face. Like, at the point at which my opponent has 20 health, I have 5 attack on the board. To recognize that the Holy Smite I am holding needs to go to the opponent's face in order for me to win. Now, that was a lot harder to do before this meta, because it was a lot harder to recognize when the oh shit moment happened, because no one was drawing like 5 cards in 2 turns. Right? They were usually, like, to the extent they were going to out card advantage you, one, they probably weren't in, you know, so there were less oh shit moments to begin with, but to the extent they were going to do that, it would have involved like a series of like top decks that were big and like an arcane intellect here and like a whatever there, and you just wouldn't know it, right? It would happen very gradually and you wouldn't know which turn to really like steal it. It's much more nuanced. It's not nuanced anymore. You know when it happens. So when it happens, you just have to know that you're shifting into your oh shit plan. So have an oh shit plan. And again, I was talking about Holy Smite. You have to have the Holy Smite in your deck and in your hand, or at least in your deck so you can try to draw for it, before you can have an oh shit plan. Like, if you don't have any reach cards in your deck, you don't have an oh shit plan for when the opponent gets 4 or more cards. You could be a great player, you can't do anything about it.
Not even great players can conjure cards out of nowhere.
One day we'll get the real GOAT, the real MVP, and break the game. It'll be
just
like
Neo. It's
yes.
Like, yeah, one day the chosen one will come and be able to just like manipulate reality, right? That's what we're waiting for one day. Anyways, before then, you actually have to play within the rules of reality and physics and all of that stuff. Yep. Until then.
So if you're playing mid-range, you have to have a lot of oh shit plans, because anything that happens, you need to switch. But what if you're playing like super value, right? You're just like you have a lot of big cards, they're really good, you're just trying to survive, and then you see whose deck is bigger, and you whip it out, and then sometimes your opponent's like, haha, mine's bigger, and then you lose, right? Well, you've built a crappy deck. You may have gotten a lot of value, but if you just stuck like, I don't know, 2 Arcanite Reapers in there instead of things that can't go face, you would have had an OSHA Plan. So I'm using Arcanite Reaper. That's a pretty good card, but you know, dumb it down. Even if you get like, I don't know, like Reckless Rocketeer, that gets offered to me a lot these days. I don't know why. Like, if you have a really good deck, sometimes a Reckless Rocketeer is going to do you way more good than another, like, Whelp. Not even kidding. Because Whelp goes in one direction. It's taking, let's say you were already going to beat 95% of decks by your size. Well, now you're going to beat 96% of decks by your size. You've increased your overall win percentage by 1. That's not that good. But if you can take the decks that you were not going to beat, which was 5%, and you can have it by having the Reckless Rocketeer, that's 2.5% more win rate, which is larger than 1% more win rate. You see what I mean? Like, even when you're drafting, you got to build in the OSHA plan. Okay, so I use the card draw one because that's a really simple example to get started. The much more frequent one that you're going to see, the much more frequent time to trigger the OSHA plan is your opponent does a tempo flip, usually with Twin Tyrant. Now, let's start off by saying Twin Tyrant is a really, really good card. It is special because it is in neutral, but it is not otherwise special. If Twin Tyrant was a class card, no one would blink. It would just be like another premium class card. Hell, we rated like a 140 something. All right, like it's 8 mana. You're not gonna like. It's still a decent enough percentage of games end before turn 8 does anything, and it doesn't taunt. So even if Twin Tyrant doesn't like gets played, it doesn't necessarily end the game. And there's ways to kind of play around it, right? Like if before turn 8 happens, you like spread really, really wide, or you put stuff out there with 5 health, like you kind of make it awkward. And we all know to do that now because Twin Tyrants are everywhere. But the effect of a Twin Tyrant and why it's so powerful is because for 8 mana, it swings the board by 15 points. 4 plus 4 is 8. 8 plus 7, which is a 7/7, which is effectively what Twin Tyrant is. It's 4/10. That's 15 points. 8 mana, 15 points. 8 mana is just swinging by like 8 or 9 points. It swings it by 15 potentially. So it sounds like that's super, super good, and it is. It's a game swinger, and game swingers used to have to be class cards or, you know, combos or something, synergies, and this one's just nothing. It's just like, here it is. When turn 8 comes along, you get to make that swing. And that's not, like, it's double, right? Like, if you think about what double means, that's not, like, that much swing at all. Because a Holy Smite is a double swing. It's 1 mana, it deals 2 damage. If I Holy Smite your Raptor, I've caused the same swing relative to the period of the game as a perfectly hit Twin Tyrant. Now, I can't turn that into a win as easily because you have 30 health and there's a lot more of the game to be played, but the swing is the same. You're losing the boardness is the same. You just have more chances to recover after that, whereas Twin Tyrant gives you a lot less chance to recover after that, and the way the stats are like distributed. So yeah, okay, it's not a perfect example, but it's the same
it's actually okay. It's like a great example and a terrible example at the same time, if that works.
Yeah, no, it is. I recognize it is because the effects are not the same at all, but the mechanics.
Because you're basically playing a different. So the swing by ratio is the same, but you're playing a very different game by that point. So it is very different.
Yep.
So yes.
Yep.
Let's clarify that before everyone's like.
Okay. Let's take a better example.
Exactly the same as
Flamestrike, right?
Sure.
Flamestrike just has to deal like 14 damage for it to do that. So that's like
just
what? That's like 4 things. Like if it hits 4 things, if you Flamestrike 4 things off the board, boom, you got the same type of swing. Now, Flamestrike requires you to be farther behind, and it doesn't like put you ahead, so you can't like again, right? You can't like take advantage of it as much as Twin Tyrant. There's a reason Flamestrike is rated 200. It's just much better than a Twin Tyrant, but people like don't get annoyed about it anymore, anywhere near as much as they get annoyed by Twin Tyrant, even though it comes out a turn earlier. One, because we've lived with it for so long. Like, Twin Tyrant will not seem bad a year from now. Like, not that bad, anyway. It'll also not have an offering bonus, and that would help immensely. But,
that will help a lot, yes.
But yeah, but we've had these game swingers in the game since the game existed. All right, this is nothing new. We're just seeing it more frequently now, and we happen to be seeing Twin Tyrant in every single freaking deck, which is annoying. But the OSHA plan for having a giant swing has always been the same, right? Like, how do you deal with Flamestrike? Think about that. That's your closest example. So what do you do to deal with Flamestrike? Well, you try to prevent it, right? You put stuff like, 5 health, or you put stuff with death rattles. You could do the same thing against Twin Tyrant, and you should to whatever extent you can do it. But what if you get Flamestrike? What do you do after that? Like, Merps, I just Flamestriked you. What do? You have a normal deck.
I build my board again and I try to kill you.
Yes. So what happens if I Twin Tyrant you? Because keep in mind, if you're actually so far ahead that like Flamestrike would be the one that destroys you, you still have like 2 minions left, even if I Twin Tyrant you, right? So then you do what you just said, which is you put more minions on the board and you go face. What do you have now? Yes. You have 5 minions attacking face, and I have a 4/10 with no taunt. Like, picking off your minions one at a time, and not even your biggest minions, just like anything with 4 health or below.
I fully play into that second Twin Tyrant that statistically you should have in your deck.
Yes.
Yes.
That's exactly what you do. Again, your win rates are lower than in a normal meta. You gotta recognize that, but your plays are the same. Whether you make the right play or the wrong play is the same. The chances that making the right play helps you is lower. But you're playing the game not just to win, right? You're playing the game to test yourself and to learn and to build upon your skills of making the right choice. And the making the right choice part here in this meta is very similar to in metas that people like a lot more. So, and remember, when it comes to like figuring out the OSHA plan, it actually is easier, right? They play a Twin Tyrant, it's OSHA plan time. So you can just focus on how to execute your OSHA plan and how to build a deck that will allow you to execute your OSHA plan. These are skills that if we ever return to a normal meta, will make you a really, really good player. Because these are skills that many, if not most, players that you consider are good, not like, you're like top 20, top 50 leaderboard players, but like people who are, infinite or almost infinite, and, you think they're pretty good players, that they don't have fully mastered. Or even mostly mastered. It's one of the toughest elements of the game to do. And some people are they get the feel for it, right? Other people like are doing ridiculous math in their head to actually calculate this out. You can start developing your feel for it more here. You don't have to do any math in this meta. You know when the oh shit moment happens, and you just got to go for it. Okay, so that's what happens when you get tyranted. So if anyone ever like is trying to figure out like, oh my god, I got tyranted, I lost. It's like, well, let's pull back. One, you weren't that ahead if you got tyranted and you got nothing left. To the extent you got tyranted and you got nothing left, the tyrant probably wasn't that big of a swing. It probably dealt like 6 damage or something instead of 8, or like maybe even just 4 damage instead of 8. And that's actually like not a big swing at all. And so you were just like not winning, and you went from not winning to like losing, which is like not that big of a swing. And you can give back in the same exact way by playing 3 minions that once again the Twin Tyrant can only hit 1 of the next turn. So you can salvage it somewhat decently from a position where you weren't even winning by that much if you were winning at all. Like if it's turn 8 and you have a 4/4 on the board and they Twin Tyrant you were not winning before this. You were actually like slightly losing, and you went to like losing harder after that, after they played a premium card on curve, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, so that's how you deal with tempo swings. If you have a deck that can go aggressive. On the other hand, you can also deal with tempo swings if you have like that value deck that I was talking about by like not caring. Like if your opponent has like 15 health and you're playing your mid-range game, but you actually like they have like 2 cards left after they play their Twin Tyrant, and you have like 6 cards and like 2 of the cards in your hand are like 10 drops. I don't know, just don't worry about it, right? They're not going to kill you. Twin Tyrant does 4 damage to your face every turn. You're not worried. Like, you got the value game. So, to whatever extent you were fighting for the board, maybe now you just don't care about fighting for the board as much. You just want to make sure he doesn't kill you, and you have, like, you want to save your health, and you want to just keep putting tempo and threats out on the board for him to take care of, because he'll run out of resources, right? Like, your plan shifts. It doesn't always shift aggressive. It usually shifts aggressive. But if you build your oh shit plan to like fall back on your resources, you can do that. Now, keep in mind that in order to build a plan to fall back on your resources, that means you had to have had an initial plan that was not fall back on my resources. I think a lot of people get that part wrong when they build their deck, where they just build a deck with a lot of resources and they're like, I'm falling back on my resources. It's like, no, that's your only plan. Like, it'll work based on how many resources you have and what type of opponents you face. But you're in a much better position if you have a oh shit plan, and that oh shit plan is to fall back on your resources, but your normal plan is actually some good mid-range tempo. Alright. One more thing your opponent can do to screw you over. There's three more actually, but these are quick. So one is they put a snowball card on the board. This is especially relevant now against Mage with the Amplifier, right? That's 5 health. But they could really have put any snowball card on the board. There's been these since the meta's begun, right? Like, even Questing Adventure was one. So what do you do for that? You hold back a removal. You should be holding back a removal anyway in this meta. You're not hurting for removals in the draft. Like, it's a pretty removal-friendly draft overall. So, to the extent you cannot use a removal, like, and you only have one in your hand, keep it. And if you're facing a mage, try to keep one that can let you deal 5 damage. That's it. That's your oh shit plan. They stick something that snowballs. You say, no, that's not going to snowball. You solved your problem, right? Okay, moving on. So if your opponent's a paladin, they can also heal for a lot, right? Burst heal for a lot. If they're a priest or a warrior, you know they can heal a lot. That's not an oh shit plan, that's just a normal plan, because you know they can always use their hero power to heal for 2. But a paladin can burst heal for a lot. A priest can also burst heal for a lot. A warrior can also burst heal for a lot. But you're already prepared for those 2. With paladins, they need specific cards for it, but they might have them. So what do you do if you're being aggressive and the paladin heals a lot? Merps. Aggressive deck, the paladin healed for 15.
I don't know, keep on hitting them.
Keep on hitting them to the face. Why? Because you're an aggressive
You got no other
deck.
plan,
no other
man.
plans,
I mean,
yeah.
just keep on hitting them.
Like, you're not winning the card advantage game. Keep on hitting them. On the other hand, if you were mid-range and pushing aggressive and your opponent healed for 15, like, maybe consider just pulling back and going more resource route, right? Or you can do, here you may have to do some actual math and be like, no, I can still hit him to the face and do stuff. But it's always good to have another plan. And this also goes to why, like, a lot of times I'm playing and people are like, oh, why didn't you do that move? That was so powerful. And I'm just like, I don't need that. And instead, if I do something else, I preserve my oh shit plan. Because I haven't played that card that will be very useful as an oh shit plan card. So that's me knowing I have an oh shit plan and knowing the value of the oh shit plan. And some viewers looking at it and just being like, well, but you get like so much more like tempo or card advantage or whatever, right? It's a good use of the card at this point. And I'm like, yes. But the point right now is not that I need more resources to win the game. I'm already winning the game. I just really need to make sure I don't get screwed by one of the many swingy cards in various fashions that exist in the meta.
Very true.
And finally, oh shit is burst. Opponents can sometimes deal up to 10 reach damage very quickly. Warriors have Arcanite Reaper. Mages have Pyroblast. These are not new cards. The oh shit plan for like mage is really like you have to figure this out before they can deal the 10 damage, right? Because if they can deal the 10 damage, you're already dead and you don't have time to execute any oh shit plans. But if your opponent starts doing something that's like just really dumbly going for your face, know that they probably have these cards in their deck, and then execute your oh shit plan, which is probably like some combination of healing face instead of healing minions and saving your taunts so that you're not taunting minions and you don't, like, to the extent the taunt's already on the board, you're not using up the taunt's health and you're like making bad trades just to save health on the taunt and like holding back a taunt, right? Especially against warrior. Like, what happens if you're lower on health? You just play the taunt so the warrior can't go face? Usually no. Usually you like hold on to the taunt and make the warrior like equip the axe, throw it to your face, and then be like, haha, here's a taunt. Now I don't lose, and you've been inefficient, so I'm more likely to finish the game faster. You put a taunt out early, the taunt could die from his normal minions, right? And that's like less effective. So there's a bunch of ways to screw your opponents over, even if your opponent has a swing on one of the resources. And in this meta, it's mostly tempo and card advantage. And when you build your deck, keep that in mind. I would so much rather build a deck with 25% less value and a little bit of reach. Like, I will give so much value up to make sure my deck has some reach. I will give so much value up to make sure my deck has some survivability, although not really in this meta. Like, normally I would, because I like that OSHA plan, but in this meta, you're much more likely. There's a lot of priests, and they do very well. So you're much more likely to die from your opponents having way more cards or swinging the tempo on you than you are from like a Pyroblast or a Arcanite Reaper. And conversely, that means that if you do have a Pyroblast or Arcanite Reaper, you're going to take a lot of advantage of opponents who are very high up. Like when you get to 8-9 wins, those decks didn't survive Pyroblast and Arcanite Reapers because there's not that many of them in the meta. So if that's part of your plan, or if that's part of your OSHA plan, you're going to have a lot of success with that. All right. That's my huge spiel for Deepfried Meta and how to like succeed more in this meta. Like I feel like people, like the oh shit moment happens and people just go, he played the Twin Tyrant first. And it's true, that is a very big swing. It sucks getting Flamestrike or whatever. But the game's not over. If you structured your deck well, if you really were actually that ahead, the game's far from over.
Yep. Basically, just don't give up and just, I don't know, think more.
Yep.
Don't give up and think more. I just made your 30-minute thing into literally 2 steps. Congratulations. That's basically it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anyways, thank you to Adukta for that very, very necessary explanation. Extraordinarily necessary. Okay. Next, I want to talk about something that happened this week. Shady Bunny, as you know, a friend of the GOAT and the Lightforge, top arena player, one of the most analytical people you will ever meet, came out with a video. This was about 4 days ago, where he explained sort of the future of his stream, and part of it was leaving behind Hearthstone, at least for now. Shady explains in the video that he always played arena, and sometimes he would leave for a little bit, but it was always with the intention of coming back. He would dabble in some other games, but then he would come back to arena. This time, though, he made a video because he was like, I want you guys to know that I am definitely stepping away from arena for the foreseeable future, and he felt like he wanted to announce it. If you're interested in watching the video, I have done a poor job of summarizing everything because it is a long video. Go over to Shady Bunny's YouTube channel and you can check it out. He is as insightful as he always is within the video. But I thought that this was important because Shady's video and his very well-articulated thoughts, I think, reflect a lot of what's going on. I mean, let's take stock for a second. Shady is playing TFT now. It seems like he's really enjoying it. Collins has only been playing Battlegrounds. And during this past week, Sunglitters as well tweeted out that it was sort of sad for her to see all these people leave the arena. And she herself is also saying goodbye to the arena. And it was kind of bittersweet for her. I wanted to talk about Shady Bunny and Sunglitter in particular, because with Shady Bunny, you had this one person who loved the challenge of getting better. And in the video, he said that after taking buckets away, that he's less able to do that. And for Sunglitters, she was someone who loved sort of the community. She was obviously, both of them were obviously really good at the game, but they sort of focused on different aspects of it as well. But both of them are leaving the game. And it's for a similar reason, although different reason from, I think, a lot of the complaints that you see on Arena HS. And it's because both of them in some ways have kind of lost faith in Blizzard's development and the future of the arena. And they might not have phrased it in this way, but I think they would both agree that it also comes down to sort of why should I care so much about something when the developers don't seem to care for it, even a fraction of what I care for it. And that's really a shame. And it also comes down to this for me. It's like, I think a lot of people focus on how bad the meta is, and whether or not you agree with how bad the meta is, it's different because, and Shady says this in his video. You should really just watch Shady's video. He obviously he talks.
Shady's video. He analyzes it like. Really
Obviously,
well.
he thinks about all the lines and he anticipates all the questions that you might have.
He's made his OSHA plans. He's played them, and it's not. Blizzard's taking it away. Blizzard's taking away the avenues.
But he says in his video that he survived, quote unquote, survived bad metas. It's not the bad meta. It's really just a lack of confidence and a frustration with how Blizzard has handled the arena, not just meta-wise, but also just the lack of effort that they've put into it. And so he just doesn't want to put in all that work into something in which the creators and the people actually affecting the game don't seem to be really caring about. So I think the one thing, like when you're talking about this issue, the one thing that sticks out is really the leaderboards. It's like we had this thing that competitive players and streamers could really grab onto, really devote their time to it. You're devoting a minimum of 55 to 60 hours a month if you wanted to get your 30 runs in. That's a lot of time, man. That's a lot of time per month. And for Blizzard to take this away, that's not optimal. But for them to never acknowledge publicly that they've taken this away, and beyond that, to announce what their plans are, that's really bad. I had other words, but I'll be picky with my words here. It's just, it's also extraordinarily bad. But I'll extend it to this. It's really disrespectful. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people might be confused because they're like, wait, Merps. It's like, Blizzard doesn't owe you anything. It's like to provide this. And no, in the strictest sense, they don't owe you anything. But within gaming, especially within gaming today, right? We're not in the 90s where a game company releases a cartridge and then it's like sort of you buy it or you don't and you take what you get kind of thing. If you release something like the leaderboards, it's not purely a benefit for the players. By players devoting time, it's a huge benefit to Blizzard. And there is this unwritten kind of agreement and contract. It's like, we're helping each other out as well.
It's like the gamer's contract. Like, just think of it this way. If you walk by somebody every day on your way to work, that guy does not owe you anything, right? He doesn't owe you respect. Like, if people keep thinking in terms of like, oh, nobody owes you anything. Yeah, no one's saying anyone owes you something. But if that guy's going to be really rude to you all the time, you're just not going to like the guy, right? Like, that seems like a normal thing that would happen, right? If the person is like bad to you, you're bad to them. Except if you're a player of the game and Blizzard, like I've made this like analogy multiple times now that we're in an abusive relationship with Blizzard.
We are,
and we are, and good for Shady. He's gotten out of it. Like, we're still here. We're still taking it. And, that's just what we're doing. And people make choices, right? But there's a reason why most people will encourage you to leave abusive relationships. You may not be owed respect from a random person, but if they keep disrespecting you, you should leave.
And here is the thing that you can never really defend against as a company. So when customers, users, however you want to define it, say, I think game feature X should be game feature Y, you can disagree on it, and that's fine. You can have very impassionate discussions on it. When two of your users, one who has played the game at like the highest of highest levels for 5 years and won Twitch Rivals, loses faith in the game. And the other, who also has played at the highest level and created her own arena tournament 4 months ago. We're not talking a year ago. This is 4 months ago.
This is very recent.
Says that she has lost faith in arena. When your users say they have lost faith in your product and in you bettering the product, you have strictly done something wrong. That's the thing. And that's different from having arguments of like, is the meta bad? Yes, no. We can have good, healthy discussions, and someone can say, no, the meta is fine. Like, not just not bad, but it's like good right now. And there's no real, true, right or wrong answer to it. But as a company, when you have these two players say, I have lost faith in the game, there is zero discussion there. You have done something wrong.
And keep in mind,
yeah,
keep in mind, they're not quitting. Like, people quit Hearthstone all the time, right? When a pro quits Hearthstone, usually what do they say? Oh, it's not fun for me anymore. I played this game too long. That's not the message that's coming across. The message that's coming across is, you don't care about this, so why should I? So it's not like people are getting burned out, which as streamers, a lot of streamers burn out of games. That's just what happens. And these are people who have played the arena for like so many years. Like, and they're not burned out. We've played arena for so many years. We're not burned out. Blizzard created a good freaking product right off the bat. And then they did everything in their power to not support it and mess it up. Not like necessarily intentionally, but we're finally at the point now where it's broken more people's backs. More very dedicated hardcore arena players. These are people who, one, saw that Blizzard was putting more effort into Constructed and still picked Arena. Two, stuck with Arena for many years of lack of development or of poor development, and are now being like, look, finally, like, you got rid of buckets, right? You're not doing anything. The leaderboards are mysteriously gone with no comment. Like, we don't know what to do anymore.
So that's the thing. Once again, it's not the most hurtful thing, and the thing that makes people like us lose the most faith is not the fact that the leaderboards are gone. It's the fact that they do not even acknowledge it or tell us anything about future plans. They don't have to divulge everything that they're doing. But for them to not even acknowledge it at all, that's pretty damning and very disrespectful. I've used this example previously in past Lightforges, and I bring it up just because it's so close to what they're doing here, which is the Overwatch team. I don't play Overwatch anymore at all. I watch streams, I watch the Overwatch League. Every once in a while, I keep up with news. But two good examples I've seen from Overwatch, which shows what it could have been on the Hearthstone side, where in Hearthstone, you have examples of, for example, gameplay mechanics, metas in which we're unhappy about something, but something is left unchanged for a while. So before, in the past, this has been a while ago. So Hanzo's arrow used to be scatter arrow, now it's storm arrow. But for a longest time, people were complaining about it. They're like, well, this is RNG. It scatters randomly and it's a ton of damage. You got to fix it. And the Overwatch team with Jeff Kaplan, who comes out with pretty frequent updates as well, which does always help. But he always said, I hear you guys. This just isn't high up on our list, and we want to keep an eye on it. Like, we understand. And we also understand why it's frustrating. They eventually did change it. But during that time, they told people, like, it's not at the point where we want to change it just yet, but we hear you guys. That's cool. And then they told us what else they were working on. Like, I think this is more important. I think that's more important. And then today we have Storm Arrow, which I think a lot of people still complain about. But one of the best examples I thought actually came very recently, just this past week in Overwatch, where a lot of people complain about the Overwatch meta. They think it's stale. They think that the same thing is played every game. Sounds familiar, guys? So the players said, we want hero bans. You have this in other games in which before the game starts, you can ban the other team from picking a character. And a lot of people thought that this was a good idea. It's implemented in other games. The Overwatch team disagreed, strongly disagreed, so much so that Jeff Kaplan had to come out and say, we think you guys are wrong. Like, this is wrong because, number one, it'll just create a ban meta.
Yep.
And number two, if you guys are angry that there is a meta, you guys will be even angrier when there is a meta plus a ban meta, plus when someone goes off the ban meta and bans someone that is not considered ban meta, you guys are going to be even angrier, which I think is pretty true. I mean, ban meta gets implemented in pretty much every game. So, and then this week, they came out with rotating hero pools.
Yeah, but we're good. Just as a general matter, and this annoys me so much, and I don't get to say it a lot because no one appreciates it. I know it's just going to be an unpopular opinion, mostly because, I mean, we're kind of in esports, but like also not really. But every time I see like the esports community congregate around like an idea, and it's an old idea, and it's been around forever, and they're like, "This is good, this works," I'm always like, that is clearly not the good idea. Not the good idea for this time, by definition, because that was the idea that was forged in the fires of way back when you had to host tournaments with cartridges and no one could patch and no one could do anything. That was the best you could do, and that was the best the community could come up with, and they're executing it. And now, when you have all of these tools, and you're asking developers to do something, and developers are God, and you're like, implement this idea that we used to implement in our basements. That's just like giving up. That's just like saying, like, yeah, just do something. We're so desperate, and this is what comes off the top of our heads because we've done it before. And if you're a developer sitting there, you could just take it, right? And you will make some people happy and a lot of people unhappy. But I think it's bad developers who just give into that, and it's people without foresight or just really desperate players who push for stuff like that. Banning heroes is like so like right down that list. Like
so this week, instead of like just a few days after Jeff Kaplan came out with that, Overwatch came out with another update and said, this is our idea instead. What we're gonna do is do hero pools. So every once in a while, we are going to universally ban or just make unavailable a few characters, and it will necessarily shake up the meta. Like, if double sniper was the meta before, okay, we're going to take away one of the snipers, and now you have to adjust, right? If EMP from Sombra was the meta before, we'll take away Sombra, and now it changes everything because now the defense doesn't have to think about it now, and it'll create tidal waves. So this is their solution, but I'm getting too far into it. What I mean is, these are two examples
Lightforge
of
podcast, the Overwatch podcast, for two people who don't play or watch too much Overwatch.
So what it illustrates is there's a huge difference, even though it's under the same umbrella, Blizzard. Two teams with different ways of communicating and different frequencies of communicating. One actually communicates. I don't think I'm not joking around. It's not hyperbole to say that the Hearthstone team does not communicate. Like they do not actually really have open communications with the players. They will sometimes very systematically, procedurally put out a sliver of information that they want you to digest strategically before expansions come out as well, and then be very silent. That's how it works.
And then they randomly say things on Reddit or tweet random things or go into someone's chat and say a random thing.
Yeah.
That is their communication style overall.
Basically. Versus how they deal with things that they do not agree with or makes the players unhappy. So on the Overwatch side, there is number one, acknowledgement. Number two, an open discussion / response from the developers as to what they are thinking. Obviously, there are some times in which players say, this hero does too much damage. This is really annoying. This thing is really annoying. They'll be like, we hear you, we agree, and we're actually going to work on it. So those are the easy ones. And the two examples I gave, those are the harder ones in which they don't really agree with either, in the Hanzo example, the importance of the issue, or in the ban issue, like the goodness or how necessary an idea is. We just don't see that. And it comes, and what it does is it has a reflection on people's faith in the developers' ability and willingness to change the game. Now, I understand lots of people are like, oh, Overwatch, it's dying, it's whatever. Its numbers are still very healthy. Overwatch League jerseys are still selling like crazy. A lot of people still play Overwatch. And I think if you poll the Overwatch community and ask questions like, do you believe that developers hear your complaints? Do you think that they are working on the complaints? Not, do you think they will fix these complaints? Like, do you think that they are
not talking
working
about
on
if they're going to fix it. We're talking about the communication aspect to it and whether progress is being like, or if not progress, something's being made.
Yep. So I think that would be much higher. Like, they might not do exactly what you want to do, but as a player and as a part of the community, as long as you know that it's like they've identified the issue and they've weighed in on it in some way, you're just like, okay, I can respect that. Here in the arena community, no one can respect their decision to completely ignore their taking away the leaderboard. Yeah. If they had just come out with this, if they had just come out with a statement, it's like, we understand you guys are frustrated. We think that there is a better option for the arena competitively than the leaderboard. Please hang on. We are trying to figure it out and we will implement it. We won't be happy with it. A lot of people won't be happy with it, but I will respect it because they're actively going in another direction or even responding to us.
People would quit.
Yes.
Because keep in mind, the people that are left that are playing and streaming the arena, we're not the people that are chasing the most popular thing out there. We're not the people that can't put up with abuse. We're very good at getting hit repeatedly and getting back up. Very good at it. And when you take people like that and you make a good proportion of them like lose their hope, that's some like next level domestic abuse. Like, if there are tiers of abuse, Blizzard's ranking up.
Yep. So that's sort of where we're at. And look, as of today, I still love talking about the arena. I mean, I just like came out with that video series, right? I'm still very happy playing the Coop, but in my free time, what do I play? There used to be a time where in my free time I would play arena. Now it's some Diablo 2, some just random mixed other games. I'll put Battlegrounds because I find it a little bit more fun. And some people, I hear this argument as well, and I do want to address it. Some people are just like, oh, it doesn't matter for Blizzard because you're just still playing their game. Why does it matter that you have lost faith? And I'm like, no, it's not just faith in the arena anymore. I'm like, I have lost faith in Blizzard, or at least this team. Team 5. Okay, so here's the thing. You guys see me memeing a lot on stream for, demons before it was actually meta, and now pogos. And when I started this game, like after a few weeks, I was in the top 100. And then I just sort of stopped playing it that seriously. I'm not going to say the entire reason is because I lost faith in Team 5, but that's certainly part of it. Like, my question is, if they ditched this one aspect of the game quietly without acknowledgement, why should I put more into this? It's like, if you've lied to me once before, it's going to taint how I view all of your statements in the future, right? Not saying that I lie. I'm using this as an example, but it's like, if you have done this before, why can't you do it again, right? You already have precedent in this other game mode. So
yeah, and it's not just
why am I going to try hard?
If you keep doing this, why wouldn't you do this to other things? I don't know. Like, this is, I mean, Blizzard has Blizzard Arena, right? This is we don't talk about it a lot because we're not leaderboard players. And Like, we just aren't. We don't play enough to actually get on the leaderboard. And like when the leaderboards came out and they had a discussion, they're like, should we lower the number of runs for the leaderboard? We stood up and we said, hey, look, we're not on the leaderboard right now, and we don't think you should lower it because that's for the hardcore players. It's not for the people who are playing like 20 arena runs or 15 arena runs a month like we are. It's just not for these people. It's for the hardcore people. And so, we didn't talk about it all that much in the last few months when the leaderboards disappeared. We kind of joked about it on the Lightforge. And so, like, still no leaderboards, still no leaderboards. But for people who take it seriously, who do play all that many games, that was not just, like, a big part of what it means to be a competitive arena player and their identity as, like, an arena streamer. But it was also the only thing.
It was literally the only thing.
Like, Blizzard has done so little for the arena from a competitive standpoint that was the only thing. And to have that taken away without even, goodbye, like, I don't know. I think what Blizzard did to these people, it's just...
it's very disrespectful.
Disrespect is a light word to use. That's
basically it. So that's sort of where we're at. And here's the thing. Once people lose faith in something, it's hard to get it back. It's just like trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trust is really easy to lose and very hard to gain back for many things. Like, if someone lies to you, they can make it up to you and you can eventually gain trust in them. But if they lie to you about something significant that impacted you, it's like, it takes a while, right? Like, I'm not going to go into more specifics because you probably have one example in your life that you can think of and just be like, yeah, and that's sort of how it is now. And that's just because that's how games are now. And that's how developers want it to be. They want you to have trust in them to develop that loyalty. And right now, I don't have faith in them. And it's influenced my thinking of other modes developed by Team 5. I actually really like Battlegrounds. I do. I think it's a really fun game. But beyond the fact that it's in beta right now, why should I put 110% into it? I don't think that I will ever sort of push other aspects of my life off to the side to put 110% into this when I know that this team has very blatantly neglected another mode before. So that's it.
Yeah, and remember, we're speaking about this from like a player or content creator perspective. Like, for these people, it's like literally part of their livelihood, if not their livelihood period, right? Like, you got to have some trust there. For us, we have day jobs, so like, that's one of the reasons why we can say the things we do and we can take the punches that we can take. We just have less to lose than professional streamers, gives us a good amount of rope to fall back on, I think. And I think, like, honestly, if I was a professional streamer, if I had made that jump a few years ago when the conditions were looking good and I was seriously contemplating it, and I did not fully realize how much I did not like streaming more than 3-4 times a week, which you would have to do as a professional streamer. That would have been such a bad life decision. At that point, if I made the jump and I was a professional streamer, I'll tell you what, there's no way I would be playing the arena as my main game. I may not quit it like forever or like quit it for the near future, but I would have definitely shifted most of my attention like to another game by now. Like, at the very least, to Battlegrounds, but in all seriousness, it would have been before Battlegrounds even existed, because it's been such a long time of arena abuse from Blizzard. Like, just different periods, right? Neglect and abuse. We're in neglect right now. We just came out of abuse. We're gonna go back to abuse soon. I mean, I know it. Other people may not have faith that Blizzard's going to abuse the arena again, but I trust that Blizzard will, and we will no longer be neglected at some point. My estimate is July, by the way. That's my estimate.
All right. So, anyways, talking about this, we made it into something like very serious. You might be like, oh, it's just a game. I mean, it's a game that a lot of people put their lives into, right? It's like, if you ask Shady, it's like, how much of an impact has Hearthstone Arena been on your life? I mean, it's meant a lot to him. He has put a lot of himself into it. And you can dismiss it as just like, oh, but it was just a game. Like, it's like, no, that's like, a lot of people put a lot of themselves into something that you might think is trivial, right? But it means a lot to them, and it's a way for them to display their skills. Any sport is trivial if you really think about it. Like, why you're just hitting a ball or throwing a ball or catching a ball or something like that.
All three, usually.
All three. Sometimes all three. Anyways, those are my thoughts. It's been kind of a sad week because of Shady Bunny's announcement, and it's not like that was a turning point, but it's a good time to reflect because came out with this video. It's a good time to reflect on this. And once again, go watch Shady Bunny's video. He is extraordinarily thorough and articulate, and just the amount of detail that you expect from Shady Bunny. All right, I want to talk about Battlegrounds for a little bit.
Oh,
because
okay.
Yeah. Just a tiny bit.
All right. So the meta has changed in Battlegrounds since the patch, which was like a little bit ago. Actually, it came out with basically with the new expansion, and they added 2 demons, took out a demon, and it's now
added
a demon
Tyrion.
Meta. Oh yeah, they also added some heroes. I don't really care about the hero additions because they like don't affect most games too much at like my skill level.
Well, the thing is, if they just put in a normal hero, and by normal I mean not that great of a hero, that would be whatever.
Wait, is Tyrion like the hands down #1 hero right now? Like, is it like
you can argue
Daryl
whether
level?
or not he's the best hero, but there's no doubt he is a top tier hero.
Okay.
He is one of those heroes that it's very easy to get top 4 with. Okay. Very, very easy. So that has changed.
And is he also very easy to play?
Yes.
I'm gonna pick him every time then. I haven't picked him yet. I was like, ooh, new hero. Seems rough. I can't pick any tribes.
Yeah. So he's definitely top tier hero. You should pick him if you get him. The amount of tempo that you gain from his hero power and the ease of play with him makes him like really, really, really good. So, but what I want to talk about today was this is going to be all complaints for this podcast. I wanted to address a problem I see in Battlegrounds right now. First of all, Battlegrounds is still in beta, so like I'm going to give it a lot of leeway. I think there's quite a few things we can change, but Blizzard has made a very fun game, and it's still in beta. But I think one thing that they definitely have to address is the pacing of the game in a demon meta. Right now, people are playing a ton of demons, and I've talked about this on stream as well. What it does is, first of all, if you compare Battlegrounds to other auto battlers, it's faster. If you watch a game of TFT, for example, TFT takes twice as long as Battlegrounds, sometimes a little bit more. You just take less damage. There's a lot more nuance there. Battlegrounds is, once again, Blizzard simplifies something and makes, and they simplify something, they add polish to it, they add in this X factor that's very fun. That's Battlegrounds. What they've done is they've taken something, made it faster, but by creating a demon meta, it's made the game really fast and really played at a razor's edge. What it's done is, everyone complained about the Murloc meta, and I agree, it wasn't great, but at least the Murloc meta allowed you to play a little bit and have some breathing room. What the demon meta does is it gives players, all players, extraordinarily fast scaling in the early and mid game, which you weren't supposed to have before. Like really fast scaling in the late game, no one cares about because it's the late game. but extraordinarily fast scaling in the early game as well. And it really puts the game on a razor's edge because you're smorking down other people, but you're smorking down yourself as well. So in the mid game, it's just full of people that got beat up by demons, and then people with also low HP because they're beating themselves up with demons through Wrathweaver. And it makes this very fast game even faster. And the best analogy I could think of is kind of like poker, in which you can have a normal game, like a normal kind of sit and go table game that might conclude after an hour. That's TFT. You can have turbo poker, which the blind structure is much faster, it's bigger, and then even if you like that, you can have the super turbo poker where literally it's like the big blinds start off at 50% of your stack. It's like, is there skill in there? Yeah, there still is. But you're really just like accelerating the game. And that's what's happening with the demon meta. So I had a similar complaint with like the death rattle meta as well, because within the death rattle meta, it's really like what popped out of the death rattles, and you could get smorked down for like 30 damage in the mid game, which should not be possible. And I thought that was bad, and I still think that's bad. So if that ever comes back, I will have the same complaint. But I think the demon meta as well, it's just not good because it forces everyone to be at low health. You're either getting beat by demons, or you are going demons and you're killing yourself. And then what ends up happening is a lot of people go demons. So one demon, even though they're doing pretty well, will get out-demoned by someone else, and then they'll just get beat in the mid-game. And it's created an arms race. And you see it in the high MMR lobbies, in which a lot of people are staying at, for example, tier 1 for an extra turn or two. Not just people that would typically do it, like Rafam, like a lot of people are doing it because they're just like, I need to stave off the early pressure. And in effect, they're also just buying up the Wrathweavers. Everyone's buying up Wrathweavers because they're like, well, if everyone's going demons, the only way I'm not going to get smoked down is if I go demons myself. And it just creates this arms race, right? Where it's like one person goes demons, other person has to go demons. And I just don't find it that healthy. The game overall, really fun, good stuff, Blizzard. But I think something like this needs to change.
Yeah, I played demons once. This is my contribution to this discussion. I played demons once, and I got good rolls, I think, and then I built a demon army, and I got last place.
Nice, excellent.
Yep, that's the one time I tried demons in this meta.
Cool.
I just don't know what Blizzard was thinking with the odds. Like, that should be like whoever's like doing it from a mathematical perspective should raise the flag and been like, you're gonna have too many demons if you just add a demon. Like, there were too few demons before, but like you can't just add a demon. Like, you got to do other things with the odds. You have to like dilute it a little bit after that too, or to the extent you're gonna add a demon, you can't add it that early. Like, I don't know. It's in beta. Can't complain too much about balance, but
yeah, the design of
like, they had to have tested it. I don't understand how this came out like this. Like, what kind of information, right? Because when you're testing, you're not necessarily trying to create the perfect meta just yet in beta, but what you want to do is to get useful information. And I guess they may have gotten a useful meta information from this test, but like maybe they were just like, hey, what happens if everybody goes really fast? Let's try it. But I don't know. Like, I don't know what I would do with this information if I was in Blizzard's shoes, besides be like, oh shit, let's do something else.
People who've thought about this have tried to analyze it, and I don't think anyone has a great answer, just because the way that this game plays out as well, you're necessarily going to favor the tempo classes. Mm-hmm. This is the reason that like Yogg is one of the top heroes, if not the top hero. Why AFK is so good, why Daryl is so good, why Edwin is so good, etc., etc. Tempo in the early game is so good because, and here's the thing. in some game aspects, if you are good in the early game, you should be bad at the late game, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Battlegrounds, if you are good in the early game, you are so much better in the late game because you survive to the late game and you can take risks in the early mid game that you otherwise cannot. So it's a perfect example of snowballing and you being on this path that's really hard for you to get out of. So if you are a Nefarian, who sucks now, by the way, because first of all, people are going demons, but you have nothing to help you early game. You get behind, you're forced to play defensively, which means you scale less. You just keep on getting more and more and more behind. So that's just going to be a problem with BG. And you can lessen it, but it's the foundational structure of the game is made such that this is going to happen. So there might be some creative way to fix it, but it's not easy. It's not apparent. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do, if they do anything at all. Because even if they don't, it's still a pretty freaking fun product, which props to them. But it is a problem in which, let's face it, ever since BG has come out, the tempo classes have been the best. Whether, and the best classes have changed, but, it's always been tempo classes. Like, remember first week when Millie was the best, but that's because she gave immediate +1/+1 to mechs, which were the best things. So you were giving instant stats. And then when Bran, the hero, was out, he was universally the best because he just gave +1/+1 to something on your board, with you basically doing nothing, with you doing whatever you were going to do anyways. So it's stuff like this in which the format of it just lends itself to early tempo. And if you get that early snowball, you are not just better in the early game, but you're so much better in the late game. And
you know what they're going to end up doing. I 100% guarantee this. It's going to come one way or the other. It may not be as blunt as I'm saying, but it will have the same effect. They're going to add a blue shell. It is the dumbest way to do this, but it is easy, it is effective, and they set out in the very beginning, they did not want Battlegrounds to be competitive. And if you don't want it to be competitive, no one really cares about a blue shell. Like, no one feels too negatively about a blue shell. Not like, exactly like that, but maybe like, whenever you whenever like everybody reaches like the next round, whoever happens to be first takes like a few damage. Whoever has to be second takes less. Whoever happens to be third takes like,
or has a pick. Well, TFT has something to try to help out players that are behind, in which they get to pick first in the carousel. So it's like a sports team, right? Like, if you're bad, you get to draft ahead of the teams that are good. That's literally what TFT does.
Yeah.
That's what sports teams do.
I don't think you can do that with Battlegrounds. That would slow the game down too much. They wouldn't allow it.
I know. So not that thing. I don't know. Like, they'll either change the matchup structure, like try to pair the top players against each other more often, or they might like change, micro adjust your chances of getting better units.
Oh my god, live micro adjust.
Oh god. Oh man,
your
that's
chances
terrible.
of getting higher ranked like stuff to roll is lower the higher your current relative places to the field. Oh my god.
You're number one with 40 HP. Everyone else is like 10 HP and below, and all you're seeing are like Murloc Tidehunters.
3 triples.
Oh god, yeah, triples. Except by that time you don't have any space. You have 0 space. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that would be terrible. Please,
but they're gonna have a blue shell mechanic, and I don't know if it's gonna come at launch, but at some point people are gonna get annoyed at the tempo meta. And you're right, they can't fix it like in a elegant way.
That's just how the game is designed.
Yeah. Like I remember like when people come up with hypothetical problems on like whatever the Hearthstone like format was, and they're like, so how do we fix this, or how do we prevent this kind of thing? And I'm just like, you can't without making a OP card and control the class, like, and control the meta basically. And then you're just doing what Blizzard's doing or trying to do. But you guys see Blizzard fail all the time, and they got resources. Yeah, I see MTG fail all the time, and they got even more resources in terms of the
I think
strategy.
the perfect example is with MTG. They made it fundamental. God, I can't even.
Okay, I was about to say, what are you trying to say?
Blah, 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 blah. They made a decision that you have to draw and play your mana. That is the core of MTG, and also the bane of a lot of people's MTG experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that Hearthstone said, look, that's so bad. Like that experience of drawing either too much land or not drawing enough land is so bad. We're just going to give you a natural ramp, a natural smooth ramp. That creates its own problems, definitely does. But they were just like, that's like one of the worst experiences. And I think people would agree. It's like something that is like, extraordinarily
why
frustrating.
Just end the game in the very beginning, like a third of the time, if not more? Like why?
Yeah.
Well, it feels like a very crappy way to design a game.
That is bad. And MTG has been around. That game is extraordinarily popular. They make a ton of money. And you'd think that if there was a way to fix it, they have printed cards
that have too much momentum right now that they can't actually fix it, even though like they have the resources to fix it, but it's just not worth it commercially to try to fix it.
It's not worth it.
Like
so
MTG
there are some things
at like such a freaking snail's pace in terms of development, like for any kind of changes. Like just look at their mulligan. Look how long it took them to like create a still bad system of mulliganing, but that is like way better like turn 1, turn 2 than they had before. And this was a problem that like I'm sure they've mapped out, because like I'm not like trained in this or anything, and I mapped this out in like a couple of weeks, like fully on like all these different types of like mana curves too, of what first and second is. So I'm sure the people who are like designing the game and or who they hired after the game got big, like this was figured out in like the 90s. Definitely. 100% of the time it was mathematically figured out, and all the things you're looking at right now as possibilities were all thought of back then. And they still haven't fully implemented anything that even in theory would make the playing field even. Anyway, getting off topic. Point is, for Battlegrounds, which is not supposed to be competitive, unless they try to do a 180 on that and actually making competitive, I think a good fix is some kind of red shell mechanic, some kind of catch-up mechanic that makes it just like blatantly beneficial to basically be a slower class.
Red shell, not blue shell.
Not blue shell.
Not blue shell, but red shell. And if you guys don't know what we're talking about, search up Mario Kart and it'll be explained. Anyway.
All right.
Cool.
Question from the GOAT?
Should we still... We're like... This has been a long one.
It's a super long one, but let's do a question from the GOAT. I feel goaty.
Question from the GOAT. This week in Dog's chat, once again, it's not through any official, we learned that Mike Dene is no longer working on Hearthstone, but he's still at Blizzard. He's working on a project that he says he cannot name yet. So
juicy.
Very juicy. First of all, what do you think he's working on?
So, if you guys don't know Mike Dene, he's the person who led this whole Battlegrounds thing, and he's part of the original Bembro team of plucky Blizzard employees who were given very little resources and created a super fun and successful Hearthstone game. And he is also part of that same team that put very little resources into Arena and messed up a lot when it came to the Arena, and just bad decisions and low priority all around. So, I'll answer your question in a second, but when it comes to the departure of like these old school Team 5 people from Hearthstone, I definitely think it's a huge blow to Hearthstone. Like, as a game, and like just look like battlegrounds, it's something that should never have been good or even passable. Like, he was basically given like an impossible task, and he made it fun. And I'm sure the rest of the team also, helped a ton and whatever. I'm just giving him not like all the credit, but like he's the director, right? So he's responsible for a lot of the ultimate decisions that came into the game.
Battlegrounds is truly MacGyvered, because you are supposed to create auto battler. using cards / tools from a card game that was never meant to be an auto battler because that format never existed before. So really, this is the truest sort of MacGyver possible. It's like you're on an island and it's like, oh, construct a satellite using these pineapples here. And then he did. He made a freaking amazing satellite with random coconuts and some sand. That's amazing.
Yep. And with all of that great game design comes, what the old core team did in the arena, which again was designed pretty damn well when you're talking about launch, right? 3 cards, very limited draft choices, but enough to create varied deck. Like, the design decisions are so on point. And then afterwards, the ways in which to attempt to grow a game mode or to fix inherent flaws or to just, just doing stuff with it was so poorly implemented. So for a game like Hearthstone, outside of new game modes, like Battlegrounds, for example, like you need kind of a different generation of people. You need people who are more like refiners than the creative types. People who are, not necessarily going to give you the most fun game from the ground up, but people who will take a fun game and make it better for existing players and for people who care about it a lot. Because let's face it, Hearthstone may have started out being like 99% casual, but these days, probably a lot higher percentage of what would be called like pretty hardcore players. Like, who's just picking up Hearthstone now and playing it, right? At least like the core Hearthstone game or like Arena or something. So, like, I think the transition is going to be good. It may take a while for it, everything to fully take hold, but I'm glad these kind of things are being made. And I'm also glad that also Peter Whalen as well. Chat's bringing that up. Yes, Peter Whalen's moving to. Is it confirmed that they're working on the same project?
No.
Okay. Well, regardless, I'm very excited of whatever projects they're working on.
What do you think it is, though? Because here's
Diablo
the thing.
5.
Diablo 5.
No.
Yes, they're already thinking.
Diablo, like Diablo 4.5. Let's go with like a random Diablo or No, the StarCraft one's already been worked on. This is too late for a StarCraft thing,
right? So
late.
Here's the thing.
It may be literally like a Warcraft like spin-off kind of like game that's like doing something weird that you wouldn't think Blizzard would do. Like
you might not think of it.
Like
so here's the thing.
Warcraft
If you guys
that's my
are
French.
guessing,
Warcraft dating
oh my
sim.
god, you know what? Blizzard will pull it off.
Just because I'm playing Fire Emblem right now, and I'm like, Blizzard could do a Fire Emblem game and do a pretty good job of it without the strategy part. Like, or like a very like super basic version of the strategy part, right?
So here's the thing. If Mike Tenay has said that he cannot say what he's working on right now. So I've seen a lot of guesses and some in chat right now. It's like, oh, he's obviously working on this project or that project. No. It does not currently exist in the public knowledge, the public domain, because if it did, he is able to name it. He cannot name it, so it's just something new. It doesn't necessarily mean it is a new game, but it is something that he cannot currently disclose, which is very exciting because Blizzard, they're not churning out games every single freaking year. It takes a while. So no matter what it is, it's pretty exciting.
And keep in mind that this guy has like Mike Dene has a lot of clout at Blizzard. I would imagine, being such a veteran and having contributed on like different like franchises and different games, and just I think you have to like get a lot of cachet at Blizzard for just being on the original Team 5. Like, that's one of like the glory moments, right? That's like being on like the revival of the Overwatch team, where you're like, we did something we shouldn't have been able to do at all, like something that was even ridiculous for Blizzard. So I'm sure he got to like a pretty good pick of projects, and to have him leave at this point and not like at least see through the like implementation of Battlegrounds, which he created, I think it has to be a really nice opportunity. So I'm excited, and this is the time. Like, if you're like, if you think about like a person's career, like this is the time where you want to do something new. Like, he was already leading teams and like things like that, so it's not about like, oh, I get to be a game director of like my team. That's probably a much smaller consideration than the type of game that he's going to be able to create. So that's exciting. And this is from someone who has a very good feel of like how to design a fun game.
Looking forward to whatever he's working on, whatever it is. We'll see.
All right. That's it for us. This is brought to you by our patrons, patreon.com/grinninggoat. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. If you're listening to this, you may be listening to this before the typical Monday when we release it, because Sunday's the Super Bowl in the US, and so we recorded this Friday night live. And if you're watching this and you're wondering why this is it for now, it's because of the Super Bowl. And you would know that if you were in the US, but you may not be. So you may have no idea that this day is a very special day for this country. Yep, anyway, that's it from us. Until next week, when hopefully we'll know what the wild rotation is, because by next week it would be like just a few more days, I think, until the rotation switches. Anyway, until then, this is Oddwicta.
This is Merp. See you guys.